Acum, ca în fiecare an, noi avem un invitat special. Anul acesta am avut o mână bună, ca să spunem așa. L-am adus la București aici pe ENRICO LETTA. Atât de mult am scris despre el încât și domnul Letta s-a mirat. Dacă veți avea curiozitatea și veți citi ziarul financiar pe care îl vedeți aici pe scaunele voastre sau veți lua acasă și vedeți paginile pe care noi le-am scris despre ideile domnului Letta, cred că a devenit mult mai cunoscut aici, în România, decât poate în Italia. Domnul ENRICO LETTA a fost prim-ministru al Italiei, acum un deceniu, a fost unul din liderii politici ai Italiei, este în continuare, este unul dintre oamenii prezenți în cercurile geopolitice ale Europei și întreaga lume. Noi am dus această gală luni în loc de joi pentru a ne încadra în programul domniei sale, el urmând să plece la reuniunea G20 de la Johannesburg. Dar să vedem puțin cei care au fost invitați de-a lungul anilor. ENRICO LETTA, domnul Șucu, aveți onoarea de a-l invita pe domnul Letta. Haideți să-l aplaudăm pe profesorul Letta, prezent la Gala ZF 2025.
Buonasera signor Letta, siamo molto orgogliosi di avervi come nostro ospite, per me in particolare perché ce l'ho un'affinità un po' speciale adesso con l'Italia. Prego, sì.
Grazie.
Just a moment. Who are you? If you... So please welcome, your floor is yours. Let's applaud him.
Grazie, grazie davvero. Thank you Christian, thank you Sorin, grazie Dan, grazie molto per quello che fai per il mio paese, per il nostro paese. Ti siamo tutti riconoscenti, però per favore che il Genoa non vada meglio del mio Pisa, per favore, per favore. I would like to thank you very much for this opportunity. It's great for me because this audience is a great audience to try to share some ideas on the future of the European Union. Starting with exactly what you just had in the screen. 2 years ago, the European institutions decided to try to understand better why in Europe we are lagging behind. Why we are lagging behind the US, why we are lagging behind so many and too many other countries, and where are the problems of the lack of competitiveness of the European Union. It was a period complicated because of the war, because of many other crises. But in reality, the problem of understanding why this lack of competitiveness is today something that is touching all the different European countries, from Italy to Sweden, from Finland to Romania, from Portugal to France, is something that probably was very important. This is why they asked us, I don't know why, two Italians, maybe because we are very good in crisis and crisis management. Once done, a friend of mine, big boss of a big multinational, told me, I have a fantastic recipe. When I have a crisis in one state in my multinational, no problem. I take an Italian and I put him there. But when the crisis is over, I take the German for usual times. The reason and the reason why these two reports and the discussion about the future, and first of all, try to understand why we are lagging behind, why the stagnation in Europe is something that is too usual. And so one on the single market and the other one on competitiveness. Mine on single market, integrated to the one of Mario Draghi on competitiveness, with a link between the two. And I decided not to have a top-down report. I've not particularly wisdom to share with you and with European people, but with the experience I had, I thought maybe traveling around Europe, listening, trying to understand, trying to keep the problems bottom up, and try to understand, not in Brussels, but everywhere in Europe, how to fix these problems and how to understand better these problems. So I traveled everywhere in Europe, 1 year, more than 400 meetings, many cities, countries, and then the report. And I can tell you that I started by being surprised by the surprise. Because in the presentation of the report, at the end of the day, there's one point that is the key point I would like to share with you today. That is the following one. When in your newspaper you present the situation in the world, usually you say US, Europe, China. Usually we divide the world in economic terms in these three blocks. But if you go deep, trying to understand in reality in the different fields, if this tripartition is the right one, we immediately understand that this is a fake. And part of our problems start from this fake. Why? Because when you go discussing about financial markets, when we go discussing about connectivity, telecom markets, when you go starting discussing about energy, is there one single market of energy in Europe? Is there one single market of telecom in Europe? Is there one financial market in Europe? In reality, at least in these three fields, we are not one, we are 27. And the fact that we are 27 is related to decisions that we took all together 2-3 decades ago, and we decided to keep national and fragmented the European market in these three big fields. It was a political decision that we took all when the world was different from the world of today. It's very simple. when the single market was created, 80s, 90s, the world was a world that was half of the world of today. The second half is the rest of the world, not Europe. And at the same time, I use the comparison that is easier for me, my country. When the single market was created, my country was economically as big as, please don't laugh, China and India together. China and India together, like Italy. Today, China and India together are 20 times Italy. This is the big change that we used to live in 30 years. But we, for political reasons, decided to keep the single market just half integrated, with these three fields still fragmented, non-integrated, for political reasons. Which is the political reason? There are many. I give you just one idea on maybe the most important of the three. Financial markets. Why financial markets are so fragmented in Europe? Very simple. Because in the 90s, the digestion in the countries of the core Europe of the euro, so the integration of all the monetary policies, was so complicated that we decided to postpone the rest. And we said, the financial market, it will be for a second step. But then the financial crisis arrived, then Brexit arrived. Brexit had a terrible negative influence on the integration of financial markets in Europe. Then COVID arrived, and then we are now with this situation. The fragmentation of these markets in Europe is obliging us to say that in reality, we are one single market in some issues. For instance, you know that the single market is well known as the market of the four freedoms. Freedom of movement of goods, services, capitals, and people. But in reality, it works on goods and on people. But on services and capitals, it's so complicated to have an integrated single market. Because we decided to give each country the capacity to protect his system. Protecting each system means that we are not able to scale and we are not able to work as a unique entity. Which are the consequences of that? Maybe 30 years ago, it was a good decision. The big countries were big countries in the world was small, it was different. But today I think is a very bad decision. Why is a very bad decision? Because the fragmentation is refraining the scale and the capacity of the European companies to become big enough to play at world level. And if we are not able to become big enough to play at world level, which is the consequence? The consequence is that we will use non-European services, goods, and tools. And we will use the goods or the services that are issued by companies that are big enough, so non-European. I ask you to think a little bit on some issues, some topics, our daily life. How many savings, European savings, are flying out of Europe, going to the American market? Why? Because our markets are fragmented. The American market is one, big, integrated, giving big returns. And these same savings, the central bank in Europe says that is around 300 billion euros. It's big, 300 billion euros each year. Savings of the Europeans flying to the US, invested in the American market, transformed in strengthening of the American companies, the same American companies that are flying back to Europe, buying with money of the European savers, European companies. When I say on the financial sector we are becoming a colony of Wall Street, it's not something negative against Wall Street. I'm just saying that we are Europe. And if we are Europe, we have to become big enough to help real economy with European finance. Take another sector, financial sector, important like digital payments. I say in a very simple terms, we the Italians will never pay with a French credit card, never. The French will never pay with a German credit card, never. Germans will never pay with a Romanian credit card. And all happy to pay only with American credit cards. This is what we do daily because of the lack of European scale of our financial services. Any American product in finance starts American and have immediate access to all the American market. And having access to the American market means that you are immediately global because you are big enough. No matters if you start in Alabama, in Texas, in Florida, you are American. Think a little bit to the products that we launch in Europe. A bank, an insurance, a fund. The first passport is always national. You start Romanian, you start Italian, you start Irish, you start French. But if you start with a national passport, your first obstacle won't be in China or in the US. Your first obstacle will be in the neighboring country that will try to block you because they have to protect their own tools in the same sector. This is exactly what is happening daily. Take what is happening on mergers among banks in Europe. Have you heard about mergers among big banks in Europe? It's 20 years that we don't have mergers, transnational mergers. We have the same landscape, which is the consequence. The biggest American bank is 8 times bigger than the biggest European bank. In a nutshell, we have to create one single market and we have to scale. Scaling doesn't mean that everything has to be a European champion, German or French. I want to be very clear. Scaling says that we have to create European champions working in all the European market, starting in one country or in another, but if they are not at the top level in terms of dimension, even the SMEs won't have the possibility to be successful. How many SMEs work with the big champions? Many. So the huge problem today is this problem of scale. I say that for a very simple reason. If we are not able to do ourselves this scale in telecom, in energy, in the financial markets, the colonization of Europe will be the consequence. The discussion in the 37th edition in 10 years will be a discussion on, do we want to be a colony of the US or a colony of China? And I think we have to know today that the only way to avoid this crossroad is to deepen our European integration. And it is not something that is so, I would say, particularly sharp. Integrating what we are is something that figures are telling us. Do you know there's a study from the IMF telling us that if we integrate and we remove barriers within the European Union, we will gain a percentage of competitiveness that is 3 times the cost of Trump's tariffs against the European Union. It is not just a problem of what we can do in the rest of the world. The problem is the barriers that are the obstacle internally. And it is not just a problem of markets, dimension of the markets. By the way, I would like to give you just on that another final point, that is the telecom sector. The telecom sector spoke European. In the 90s, everything in the world had a European leadership in telecom. The technology, the brands. If you give a look today, the situation is very complicated and very different. Why? Because we are 27 markets. What is the consequence? Each market has 3, 4, 5 operators, 80 operators in Europe. The scale matters here. Do you know how many clients in average for each Chinese operator of telecom? Is more than 400 million clients in average for one operator. 100 million for one American operator, average number. And for a European operator, the average number of clients, because of this fragmentation, is 5 million clients. The fragmentation is something that maybe we are happy because we think we stay protected at home. But the result is that we are a colony of something that is happening out, with rules that are decided out of Europe. We become very easily rule takers. We were rule setters. And the difference is huge on many issues. Let me say one big difference on technology. The protection of data, the human rights. For the first time in our, I would say, history, we have a second body. The second body is our digital identity. Is the information that we have in our mobile. If someone enters in your mobile, knows everything about you. Is a second identity. The protection of these data are fundamental. And we know very well that today wins who owns data. So protection of data are fundamental. Give a look to the different way to deal with this data protection in the world. There's a difference between the Europeans, what is happening in the US, and for instance, what is happening in China. It is not the same. At the end of the day, in China, the ultimate owner of data is the state. In the US, the ultimate owner of data is the market. The rules, they don't have many rules on that. In Europe, the ultimate owner of data is the person. And for me, this is a great accomplishment of our European approach to that. Is the way in that to protect right of the persons. Dan, you said something important in your introduction, in your introductory remarks. You said that in this European Union, in the way in which we are lagging behind, there's a big problem. And the big problem is lack of simplification, bureaucracy, and difficulty that is daily life for you. That was another part, and it is my conclusion in this presentation of my work and in the report. And it was the idea to say the fragmentation is not just vertical, energy, telecom, financial market. There's a problem of fragmentation that is horizontal. If you want, with your services or your products, to try to go everywhere in Europe and to exploit the single market, you have another problem. And the other problem is the fact that each country has his own corporate law. And if you go in countries with federal institutions, you have also the regional corporate law. It's crazy. You spend how much money to try to manage these differences? How big is the level of money that we are losing because from abroad, people don't want to enter into Europe because of this fragmentation and this lack of simplification. So in the report, another big flagship that I try to put at the attention of the public discussion, and I'm very happy because I took advantage today to discuss with the Romanian top authorities on that, is this proposal that I put in the report to say, I don't want to open the Pandora box of the elimination of the 27 corporate laws, because we know very well, my report is a very pragmatic report. I don't want to open Pandora box of institutional reforms that are so complicated. Today, the red alarm is today. We need to have today's solutions. So the proposals I put was to create a 28th virtual state. With this 28th virtual state with its own rules, simple rules, dedicated to some of the issues. For instance, my first idea was on startups. How many startups we have in Europe? How many young people are starting? Good idea, first 2-3 steps in Europe, then the jump into the US, because it's the only way there to find money and to find an ecosystem that is not risk adverse. But if we create a 28th virtual state with its own role, a sort of passepartout, a sort of fast track, with an easy role, that can be optional and fast to be applied, I think it can be the king of also simplifications. I conclude, and I end up here with a, how we say, a sign of hope. Because what I am trying to tell you, these topics are the topics, the fifth freedom, for instance. The fifth freedom is to add to the 4 freedoms I mentioned before, goods, services, capitals, people, the freedom based on innovation, knowledge, the intangible, that is what we miss. But I was saying that the good news is that the European institutions decided to take seriously the problem of the lack of competitiveness and the need to have solutions. And they decided, with the European Council decision 3 weeks ago, I discussed it with the President of the Republic here this afternoon, they took a very important decision. They decided to take seriously these topics and to take seriously also one of the solutions I tried to put in my report. That is, my experience tells me that policies without a deadline are academic debates. If we want policies effective and implemented, we have to put a deadline. And they decided to take seriously and to put a deadline. So in the conclusions of the European Council, October 23rd, they decided to put 2028. And this deadline, 2028, is the deadline. You will be 30, if I'm not wrong, in 2028. The deadline will be the deadline on, by this date, completing the integration of all these leftovers, introducing the 28th regime, the 28th virtual state, and the 5th freedom. In my view, this is a big challenge for all of us, because we have this opportunity. The European Council took this decision, and the Commission now is starting. But I conclude on that. It is not just a topic for politicians. It is also your job. And your job is to be done vocal, is to be vocal, hiring the bar and the attention, the focus with the political class, with governments, with authorities, asking to take seriously this challenge and to clearly say, without the decisions that goes in that direction, the European Union will be half what we need. And people will start saying that, but at the end of the day, is it the European Union that we needed if we are not able to compete with Chinese and Americans? So what I would like to say in conclusion is, this is the big mission for the future. Being able to repatriate jobs, to repatriate capitals, and to mobilize energies within the European Union, eliminating these borders among our markets, and being able to create a strong European economic and industrial and financial identity. I think is not only necessary, but is absolutely urgent. This date and this deadline, 2028, is an enormous opportunity. Is, I think, to us, to all of us, to try to be vocal and to say this is not just for experts, is for our children, is for the new and the next generation. If we are able to give our children what our fathers gave us with the European Union, I think we will be able to take advantage of all of that. But it is not coming by inertia. We need to move, and we need to move in that direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. And for our readers, we have some questions to you, and we'd like to put here. So, how much longer will the Europe model, social, bourgeois, bureaucratic, aging, and increasingly less capitalist and economically competitive, be able to exist?
If we are able to understand that our system is also a system that can be able to attract people from everywhere in the world, because we are the most attractive place in the world, then we can be able to exist in the future. But we have to being able to create this attractive ecosystem. And the rules are important. Simplifying the rules is fundamental, and at the same time creating the level playing field. If you are not living in a level playing field, because each country has its different rules, and the single market is there only, I would say, rhetorically and not concretely, at the end of the day, it will be impossible. This is why I say we have to be open to these reforms, to these changes, but we have to be very positive in contributing to that.
Okay, and the second question, how can Europe protect itself from the populist, nationalist, autocratic, sovereignist, and the far-right rhetorics, which is gaining more and more ground?
Well, it's very simple. By saying that nationalism is helping Wall Street, China, and the US. Nationalism in Europe, creating the fragmentation, is the way to send jobs, capitals out of Europe. I give you one example that is not something generic. Numbers and jobs. Defense. We are helping our Ukrainian brothers from the Russian aggression, and we have to continue to do so. But this topic is the perfect demonstration of what I've tried to tell you. I give you one number. In the first 2 years of the Russian aggression to Ukraine, we, Europeans, all together, we paid 140 billion euros to help militarily Ukraine. What does it mean? Simple. We bought arms, weapons, military furnitures, and we gave to the Ukrainians to defend themselves. 140 billion euros. But we needed to give them this military furniture immediately, not to build up consortium with long-term programs, no, to buy and give them. Our defense industry is fragmented in national defense industries. Our defense systems are all fragmented in 27 with a duplication of missions. Everyone is doing exactly the same. All together, with Europeans, we spend more than China. But we do exactly the same. So, in a nutshell, do you know how much of these 140 billion euros was to create jobs in Europe? 20%. 80% of the rest created jobs in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and all the other states of the US. Why? Because our defense industry is so fragmented that we are not able to deliver immediately as it was necessary. In that case, I'm talking about more than 100 billion euros, money of me, of you, European taxpayers, that created jobs out of Europe because of the fragmentation of the European Union. So, when I'm saying that fragmentation, nationalism, is the gift, the perfect gift for Chinese, for Americans, for Wall Street in the financial terms, I say something that is very clear. So we have to keep the European Union as a great fundamental mix between the European flag and the national flags. They are together and they will coexist together. But at the same time, if we don't integrate on these fundamental tools for competitiveness, it will be impossible for us to keep competitiveness, jobs, capitals, and we will just give a great gift to our competitors.
So the next question, what role do you foresee for Eastern Europe country in the new single market, especially those that want to build their own international companies? Will they be advantaged or disadvantaged by the new policies?
What I try to say has a value that is double or triple for those who are doing business in the countries that are geographically at the periphery of the European Union. Because it is clear that if you are at the center, physically at the center of the European Union, is, I would say, much easier. But if you are geographically at the periphery, you need to have the single market integrated. Because if the single market is not integrated, it will be an obstacle bigger and bigger and bigger for you or for all our entrepreneurs that will try to get a large market. So I think it is fundamental, first of all, for you. This is why I'm trying to give this message here. And this is why I strongly say and I advocate for a leadership role of Romania on that. Romania can play a fundamental role because Romania is today geographically at the crossroads of fundamental geopolitical switch. And I think it is fundamental to consider it and to know that these geographic considerations need the elimination of the leftovers, of the borders that we still have. In January, we had the great news of Schengen. Now we have to add to this Schengen topic the Schengen for telecom, the Schengen for energy, the Schengen for financial markets. It is absolutely fundamental. Otherwise, the isolation will be a big minus for competitiveness.
And the next question, should the European Commission directly take charge of developing a high-speed rail network between Europe capitals? Or should it continue leaving this development to the member of the states? This is the question of Sorin.
I give you I share with you a very short story. When they asked me to write this report, I immediately said, Europe is a small continent. I'll try to travel around Europe by high-speed train. In my country, I would do, I think you are familiar with my country, the best way to travel in my country is to do it by high-speed train. The same in France and the same in other European countries. I suddenly, immediately understood that in Europe, it's impossible to travel capital by high-speed train. There's only one high-speed train connecting capitals in Europe. It's the famous Paris, Brussels, Amsterdam. It's the only one. For the rest, you have to fly. That is totally crazy, I think, for a small continent as Europe. So the most important part of this is that I tried, when I presented the report to the European leaders in the European Council, I told them this story, and I told them, we need a moonshot. We need a moonshot. Because if we have a moonshot, we can show that it's possible to do something that is useful for people, for entrepreneurs, for workers, for students, for citizens. Connecting all the capitals in Europe is fundamental. And for me, moonshot, leadership are part of this narrative. We were saying before, narrative. So the European Commission decided to take seriously this, and they announced 10 days ago, the Greek commissioner announced 10 days ago the plan to connect the entire European Union and all the European capitals by high-speed train by 2040. That is, for me, a great moonshot and a great announcement. So I think it goes exactly
will be
in
here
that
in
direction.
2040. Next question. What 3 recommendations would you give to a country like Romania to return to an annual economic growth rate of 5%? You have today a discussion with Governor Isărescu and the President Nicu Șordan.
I don't recommend because my political experience tells me that each country, each people has his own, how we say, ideas and responsibility. And so I think the worst way is to arriving from abroad and to give and to lecturing on what you have to do. You know better than I do what is necessary for Romania. I can tell you one thing, just one thing. Don't be afraid of the European integration. More European integration, more advantage for you. More advantage for you, entrepreneurs, business people in a country like Romania. So do not follow those who will tell you we have to close our borders. You have to ask exactly the opposite, to make your business bigger and to be successful.
Question? Who will win the championship in Italy? Inter Milano, AC Milan, Napoli or Juventus?
But Genoa, of course.
So, Mr. Letta, Professor Letta, thank you very much for your participation. We have some present for you. First of all, this is a draw, okay, to remember November, Bucharest, Romania, 2025.
Oh.
Yeah, it's you here. Give, for the photo, you were Prime Minister. Mr. Shuku wants to give you a shirt for...
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to add one point at the end of everything, because I shared with you many ideas on technical aspects, on competitiveness, on market, but if you ask me, what is really the core of everything in Europe? I want to share with you in 30 seconds the experience I had during this journey around Europe. I passed many borders, always without being aware I was passing a border, because we don't have the borders. But every border, I was thinking how many coffins are there of young males, first of all, young males, because before the creation of the European Union, the border between France and Germany, the border between Italy and Austria, the border, all the borders were bloody borders, because the rule was that our families knew that they used to send 1, 2, or 3 children to die or to kill, to move the border 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers up, north, south. And then the European Union was created. And then this story ended within the European Union. It is not rhetoric, because if you talk today with Ukrainian families and Russian families, today they know that this story is again like the stories that our grandfathers told us. Thanks to the European Union, we know that we can live in coexistence, peacefully coexistence, considering the borders are fantastic, a fundamental boost of energy. And I think this is the greatest lesson of the European Union. We have to tell our children, because our children are growing in a world and in our continent without wars. But we have to tell them the stories the history and the fact that the European Union is, first of all, because of that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And then a present for Ziarul Financiar, for the team of Ziarul Financiar.
So have a t-shirt for you. It's the best team in Romania. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presence here.
Știu ce spun.
Angajații de la finanțe protestează față de măsurile de austeritate. El a fost votat, dar
Acum e vina românului.
E vină. E reacție.
Știu ce te interesează. Uite cum arde toată Europa și la propriu și la figurat.
Niște fenomene naturale.
Mor oameni în fiecare an. Decesele cauzate de poluare.
Știu cum să te fac curios.
A apărut telefonul care te scapă de telefon. Nu se poate face chestia asta și ca să te ajute să slăbești ceva invizibil.
Nu te mai duci la cumpărături, nu mai bagi în frigider, e gol tot timpul, e ca la fot.
Știu cum să te emoționezi.
Zeci de pompieri români vor fi în Franța timp de o lună în cadrul unui program european dedicat controlului incendiilor de vegetație.
Știu să convin. Italienii se plâng că le pleacă românii din țară și că îi lasă fără forță de muncă. Au început să ne ducă dorul.
Știi de ce?
Erau mai muncitori.
Pentru că românii, da, sunt destul de cuminți. După o săptămână începeți să vorbiți cu mâna și după 3 luni nu mai știți româna.
Știu să câștig.
Extraordinar de bine.
Știu, deci știu.